So for this part, you're going to need your tapes that you've decided on. It can be 1 to how many different tapes that you have, but I like to choose around 5, so I'm going to start with 5 different colors. You could just do 3, you could do 1, so it's up to you. You're going to need your tape, your scissors, and your journal, your blank journal. So I like to vary the tapes, so I will go ahead and show you what I do. And I just measure. Duct tape is a funny, it tears so well that I just tear it. I don't use a scissor. But I basically measure a length and then just tear it. And because it tears not so cleanly, I usually give it some extra room so I can cut it. And then I usually line it up, and then I'll flip it over and make sure that it's straight. So you can tell that's fairly straight. It doesn't give me a whole lot on the front, but that's okay. I just basically wanted to reinforce that edge. And when you turn the duct tape, I start from the middle again and give it a good push, not all the way down, and then I go back and all the way down. I give it a push to kind of fold it over, so you get, that's your first edge. And I cut as I go. I'm sure that you'll find what works for you, but I just cut the edges as I go and start a little pile of tape on the side. Okay, and you're going to get the duct tape glue on your scissor, and when that happens, just take another piece of little duct tape and start pulling it off, and I'll show you as we go. So that's, you want to decide, okay, one of your ends of your sketchbook is only going to have a smaller amount of pages because your secret pages are in there. So the one that has the most amount of pages is the one I call the right side or the front side. So this is how it will look when it's done. Okay, so I try not to do the exact same tape I just did. I do the complementary tape. It's just how I do it because I like to have the different colors, and you can do what makes you happy. This is just what makes me happy. Again, I try to line it up, flip it over, make sure it's pretty straight, and then you might have to put the first side on lightly because you might have to reposition it. So when I know that it's where I want it, I kind of start bending it over, and then I bend from the middle to the end and then go over it with my fingers totally. So that's my front cover, and I'll probably just speed through the rest of what I'm doing here because you don't need to be watching everything. And see, and I'm choosing another, well, it gets tricky here, so I'm gonna do this for a couple times because the next one is actually a double fold. So see how I just basically put it on the ends. It's still kind of wobbly, but then when I pull it over, I can say, oh, I got that wrong. Got it totally wrong. One of the reasons I cut as I go is because duct tape sticks to itself really badly. So if I cut as I go, then I won't have these pages stuck together. They're a little bit stuck together, but not as bad as they would be. Alright, so this is where it gets tricky when you have one of your secret pages. And what I do is I open it up and fold that edge out. So this is the way it was. And you're going along, and that third page is a secret page. So you open it up, and then flip it out so that you'll have room to work on it. And I just run a long strip over the whole thing. Another thing I do when I'm cutting, especially a long piece of tape, is I will start cutting it out and then I will tape one end to the table and then pull it, because if this tape gets stuck to itself, you've ruined a whole piece of tape. So. Okay, so I'm going to use purple this time. Again, in the middle, kind of folding it over, then folding it all over. And I like to just keep up with the cut. Okay, so this one is also a one of the opening pages. So I like to look at what I've used so far, the duct tape, and then I choose one that I haven't used. So I'm going to go back to this floral one. And you're starting to get that really pretty edge happening. Okay, so on this one we open it up first. And when I have a long piece, what I do is I tape the edge down before I cut. I measure it, and then I put one edge down so that the tape doesn't flip onto itself. It's kind of important because duct tape kind of gets all, it wants to go back into a circle like it was on the roll. So make sure that you, it's kind of a little trick that I learned after doing so many of the journals. That so this gets a little tricky. You don't want to pull it real tight here because you want to be able to reposition it correctly. So now I'm going to go ahead and fold the edge over, and I'm going to start from the center like I do with the shorter pages, and I'm going to bring it towards me, and then I'm going to fold one side and then the other side. And fold the book back up, trim your edges. Then we'll move on to the next page. So I'm checking out the colors that I've used in the previous, on the previous pages, and I'm going to go back to this striped zigzag tape. And I've sped this up a little bit so that you guys didn't have to watch me do everything really slowly. So I've speeded up the video even more because basically I'm going to be doing the same thing over and over again, and that's just taping the edges. And I've showed you the basic of how you want to tape the edges. Right there, I accidentally was going to tape a double page with a single chunk of tape, and that would have taped it shut. You could do that and then put a pocket in your book if you wanted to, but I didn't want to do that. So now I'm going to go back and fix that double page spread that I almost taped together. And then I'll have trimming up the edge, and then I'll have just the back cover to do an edge on. Isn't that a beautiful edge? All those colors. All right. We'll finish up the book here. That side is complete, and it looks wonderful. Okay, so now we have the other side of the book to do, and this side is actually kind of tricky because you have a lot of pages that are double. They open up, but they also open up on an edge that opens up that way. So I'll show you how to deal with that. And now we have to kind of start over again in our pattern. So since I have purple on that edge, I think I'll go with the purple floral. And remember, if you only have one color of duct tape, that's okay. It's just, I just personally like multicolored duct tape. You're going to find a preference on your own. And the reason I cut as I go the edge is because duct tape likes to stick to itself. So sometimes, like if you go to open it up, it'll be stuck like that, and that'll rip the page. And that's just something I learned. And so now I keep a scissor. If you're left-handed, you're probably going to keep it on the left side. If you're right-handed, you're going to keep it on the right side. And I just have it there to access really quickly. So this page, I like to open up on the non-cut. See, there's two sides. One has a cut in it, or it's been ripped, and the other side of the page is not ripped. So I open it on the non-ripped side. And be mindful of what, if you're switching tapes, be mindful of the tape that you just used here, and then the tape that's here. So I am going to go ahead and use this tape because it's different than both of those. Again, I start on the non-torn side of that. And I'll show you why I did that in a second here. These get a little tricky because you just lightly want to put them on the edge and then flip it up and reposition it if you need to. Sometimes, like this time, well, I guess it does need repositions, but just don't pull real tight or you'll get a bind in the tape. And sometimes you'll have like hair, a fiber from the tape, just cut it off or cut it off later. So that's fairly straight. And what I tend to do at this point is make sure it's lightly positioned. And go ahead and push it down. And I tend to take the scissors and line it up with the tear and just cut, because I find it easier to cut now than to cut later after it's been folded over. And then you just go down each page like you would a normal single page. You kind of fold it over, and then start in the middle, go back down. And see, you can't really tell that that page is, sometimes you'll get it stuck together there, but we'll fix that in a second. Anyway, then go ahead. See, it kind of opens up when you fold it back. There's 3 of those pages, so they're a little tricky. You're probably not going to do the first one perfect, but you might. Alright, so the next one opens up again, so I'm opening it up. This is the torn side, the non-torn side. And I'm trying to stay, let's see, I can't do this floral, and I can't do the line, and I don't want to do that one again, so I think I'm going to go with the dot, large dot pattern. Again, it doesn't really matter. This will end up putting 2 colors together. If you look at this, there's 2 pages that have the stripes. And, you know, if you wanted to, you could do one color, one the other. I just find it easier to do the same color, but I don't think you'd want 3 of the same color in the row unless you were doing the whole book in the same color. So I hope that made sense right there. All right, looking at so I'm going to go ahead and turn it towards me. And then I'm just going to cut the tape only to the point of where it meets the torn page. Okay, and we're almost done with the duct tape edges. And you know, another really cool thing about the duct tape edges is it's really durable. This is going to be a journal that the edges won't get torn up when you're throwing it in your purse. Okay, so this last one I'm going to go back to the purple. If you forget to cut the journal, what I do before you fold it over, if you forget to cut it before you fold it over, just go ahead and turn it back and pretend this one hasn't been cut, and you open up that page like so, and then you take the scissor in and you just cut it really carefully like that. Okay, so the first part of your journal, first taping, is good, and you could leave it this way. I mean, if you wanted to call it good, then you can leave it this way. Now what I do is I look at the colors, and they're jewel tones. So I go into my washi stash and I look for fun colors that would accent those jewel tones. And I just pick out, like that one's a good one, that one's a good one. And you're going to get your favorites. And I like varying widths of washi tape. It just makes it fun. And you know, I would start with your 4 or 5 colors. You don't need that many, but keep it in the jewel tone, since that is kind of jewel toned. So what I'm going to do now these 2 little tapes are actually duct tape, and I really like to use them, but they run out quickly. So I'm going to stick with those. Okay, I'm using a little bit more than I said, but you know, you can use as many or as little as you want. And I'm going to put these off to the side here and show you how you can create thin tape from a thicker washi. That's where this little wonderful item comes in. Now, if you use if you find a smaller size paper, you won't have a 7.5 by 5.5 inch book. But on here, I just measure how big the page is, and I will run, like for instance, the duct tape. This is kind of thick, with being that bold of a design, so I like to trim it to a smaller piece of tape. And so I know I line it up on this mat, and if you don't want to think about measuring exactly, just keep your journal there. And that's when my X-Acto blade comes in. And you can do a bunch of different colors at once. And what I do is just pick a line to, one of the lines to line up the tape on. And I always make it a little longer, because then I won't have to worry about cutting something too short and having a little white edge peeking out. So I'm just going to run a couple colors on this. And then I'll use a metal edge or a ruler to cut them to a smaller size. And it's easy to do because I've left these squares open to line up. So make sure that you leave a little bit at the very end there. And the thinner washies tend to be real expensive. I don't know, from what I found. So now that I have a couple different colors on the mat, I'm going to take my metal ruler, or just a straight edge, and I'm going to line them up on the page, on the mat, and just cut down the edge. Be really careful. When I was in art school, I used a metal ruler to cut the edge of my finger off. It was not a happy thing. Okay, so I'm cutting 4 different widths out of this particular tape. And I'm going to go ahead and keep cutting, and I try to vary the widths of each one. I try to get a real thin one in there, and to get a thin one I just use half of one of the grids. And I like to vary the colors and layer at least 2 to 3 colors on each side. But again, another way you can deal with wanting a thin look and a thicker look is you could lay down a large, so you don't want to have the white edge like that. Washi tape is a little bit more forgiving than duct tape, but what this is doing is also making sure that edge is nice and crisp. Okay, so I really want to, that's a little bold for me. So actually I'm going to go add one of these strips. And you can either add tape, you have to be really, I forget how horrible these are to take off there, so be really careful when you take your tape off of the mat, because they do want to curl back up. So you can put it over here, or I like to break up the width, so I'm going to line that one up right here. So just think about flipping colors when you're doing this, and lining up, or not lining up, choosing different widths. So you look for color pops, and you know what will pop that edge out more, what will, you know, complement each other. So these are 2 really bold colors together. And I don't want to use the green or the blue with this again, but I am going to grab one of the thinner pieces of that duct tape. And I did not cut this perfectly. I can tell that here. I don't know if you can tell that in the, it's not off horribly, but it's off enough. But see how the pattern pops in? I really actually want something mellow in there. So I'm going to go with purple strip. Usually I try to bounce colors off of one side than the other. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the purple strip, but since I want to bring the cool colors that are over here, I am going to use the same blue or teal tape. Just tiny bit of it. And that will balance out the colors a little bit more. I tend to really like bold, bright colors. If you're not that kind of person, use really mellow or pastel or whatever floats your boat. But see, isn't that a beautiful... Anyway, so what you do is you do every page like that, and I'll probably speed up the video. But the fact of the matter is, on the inside covers, usually I do 2 to 3 on the outside covers. This one has 4. But on the inside, I usually do 2 on each. And it goes a lot quicker than you think once you start. Okay, so now I've finished taping all the pages, and I'm going to do a quick flip through for you. Okay, but we did forget something. We have these hidden pages in here that we need to finish off. So I'm going to add some washi tape to this page. I was going to explain when I showed these pages before that when you're doing the duct tape, there is a clean edge and a varied edge. And here I'll show you in a second here. With the duct tape on the inside, the middle of it where you've ripped it, will have kind of a deckled edge. But never use that deckled edge on the hidden pages, just in case that you don't add tape on them, because you want the clean edge to be on the inside. You can always cover it up if you forget. But right now I'm covering up a deckled edge with that tape. That's one reason I use the thicker tape. And I'm going to go ahead and cut that off. Also remember, there are pages on the inside and you don't want to exactly match the tape that you've already put on the inside. So I'm going to speed up the rest of the video and catch up with you in a second. Go over all your duct tape with a burnisher. Just go on every page, open it up, and burnish the edges.